The phone buzzed against my desk, my mother's name flashing across the screen for the first time in 3 years. I let it ring, watching until the call ended, then waited for the inevitable voicemail notification. Her voice crackled through the speaker, strained and desperate in a way I'd never heard before. Isabel, we need to talk. It's about the family. Please call me back. I'm Isabel, the daughter who was never good enough, the one who couldn't measure up to perfect Makey, my older brother who could do no wrong. At least that's who I was until I walked away from it all 5 years ago. Everything okay? Ryder poked his head into my office, his usual confident smile fading as he noticed my expression. You look like you've seen a ghost. Worse, my mother called. I turned my phone screen toward him. First time since I left. Shit. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. What did she want? Family emergency, apparently. I played the voicemail again, watching Ryder's face as he listened. Funny how emergencies make people remember the children they wrote off. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from my father. Please call your mother, it's important. You going to call back? Ryder leaned against my desk, arms crossed. I stared at the message thread with my mother. Years of unread holiday messages and guilt-laden texts filling the screen. I should probably find out if someone's dying at least. With trembling fingers, I hit the call button. She answered on the first ring. Isabel? Oh, thank goodness. Her voice wavered. We've been trying to reach you. I noticed. What's wrong? It's complicated. We're in trouble, sweetheart. The business, the house, everything. Meki, She choked back a sob. We need help. Of course. My golden boy brother had finally screwed up badly enough that they needed the backup plan. Me. What did he do? He made some investments, bad ones. Used the business as collateral without telling your father. We're going to lose everything. I closed my eyes, remembering the day I'd tried to warn them about Makey's gambling. They'd dismissed me as jealous, bitter, trying to tarnish their perfect son's reputation. How much? 3 million. She paused. We know you're doing well with your company. The news articles, the awards. We've followed everything. Now you have. The words came out sharper than I intended. Funny, I don't remember you being interested in my success when I was starting out. Isabel, please. We're your family. Family? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Was I family when you told me I'd never amount to anything? When you called me the useless daughter at Aunt Sarah's wedding? When you chose Makey over me every single time? Silence stretched between us. Ryder placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. We were wrong, she whispered. I know that now, but please, we need you. No, Mother. You need my money. There's a difference. I took a deep breath. I'll think about it. That's all I can offer right now. I hung up before she could respond, dropping my head into my hands. You okay? Ryder asked quietly. They're broke. Makey gambled away the family business. I looked up at him. $3 million worth of mistakes, and they want me to clean it up. Are you going to? I stood up, walking to the window overlooking the city skyline. 5 years ago, I'd arrived here with nothing but determination and spite. Now I had everything they said I couldn't achieve. Success, respect, independence. You know what the worst part is? I turned back to Ryder. Part of me wants to help, just to prove I'm better than they were. But another part wants to let them crash and burn. He finished for me. Is that terrible? After what they put you through, I'd say it's human. My phone buzzed again. Makey this time. I declined the call. What are you going to do? Ryder asked. I thought about the scared little girl I used to be, always trying to prove herself worthy of love that should have been unconditional. About the woman I'd become, strong enough to build something from nothing. I'm going to show them exactly who their useless daughter turned out to be. I smiled, an idea forming. But not by writing a check. They need to see what real success looks like, and what it costs. Ryder grinned. Now that sounds like the Isabel I know. I picked up my phone, typing a quick message to my mother. I'll be home next week. We'll talk then. The response was immediate. Thank you, sweetheart. We knew we could count on you. They had no idea what was coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making others suffer. It's about showing them exactly what they missed out on. The memory hit me as I packed my suitcase. 16-year-old me, standing in our family kitchen, clutching my acceptance letter to business school. Full scholarship? Makey had snatched the letter from my hands, scanning it with narrowed eyes. Must be some mistake, or they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel this year. Give it back. I'd reached for the letter, but he held it above his head, using his height advantage against me like always. Makey, stop teasing your sister, Mom had said, but she was smiling. She always smiled at his teasing. I'm not teasing. I'm being realistic. He dropped the letter onto the counter. Business school? Please. You can barely handle basic math. Remember when Dad tried to teach you about the family business? I did remember. I'd been 14, eager to learn, but every mistake was met with sighs and head shakes. Meanwhile, Makey got private lessons in the office, groomed to take over someday. My phone buzzed, jolting me back to the present. It was Daria. Tell me you're not seriously going back there, she said when I answered. I have to. I zipped up my suitcase. You didn't hear my mother's voice, Daria. They're desperate. Good. Let them be desperate. Remember your high school graduation? I winced. How could I forget? While Makey got a new car for his graduation, I got a lecture about being practical and considering community college instead of wasting time at business school. This isn't about revenge, I said, though part of me knew that was a lie. Bullshit. I was there, remember? I saw what they did to you. The memory shifted to another scene. My first business plan competition in college. I'd invited my family, reserved seats in the front row. They never showed up. Makey had a golf tournament that day. I found my old diary while packing. I told Daria, want to hear something funny? The day before I left for college, I overheard Mom and Dad talking about taking out a second mortgage to fund Makey's startup idea. The one that failed in 3 months? That's the one. $200,000 down the drain. I sat on my bed, fingering the worn pages of the diary. Meanwhile, I was working 2 jobs to buy my own textbooks. And now they want your money. Daria's voice dripped with disdain. Please tell me you're not giving it to them. No. I stood up, walking to my home office. On the wall hung my first business license, framed next to the newspaper article about my company's first major success. I'm going to give them something better, the truth. What does that mean? It means I'm going to show them exactly what their useless daughter built while they were busy enabling their perfect son. A text from Makey lit up my phone. Hey sis, heard you're coming home. We should talk before you see Mom and Dad. Is that him? Daria asked when I went quiet. Yeah, probably wants to convince me to bail them out before I find out exactly how bad things are. I typed back a quick, we'll see to Makey. Remember when he told you your first business would fail within a month? I laughed. Right before he asked to borrow $5,000 for his foolproof investment scheme. Did he ever pay that back? What do you think? My doorbell rang. Ryder, right on time for our pre-trip strategy session. Daria, I have to go. Ryder's here. Just be careful, okay? Don't let them pull you back into their games. I opened the door to find Ryder holding 2 coffee cups and a folder. Found something interesting, he said, handing me one of the coffees. Did some digging into your family's business finances? How bad is it? He spread documents across my dining table. Worse than they're telling you. Makey didn't just make bad investments. He embezzled, used company funds for personal expenses, took out loans using business assets as collateral without board approval. Criminal charges? Not yet, but it's heading that way if someone doesn't intervene. I picked up one of the documents, a loan application with a forged signature, my father's signature. They really think I'm going to swoop in and fix this, don't they? Ryder nodded. Question is, what are you actually going to do? I looked at my packed suitcase, then at the wall of achievements they'd never acknowledged. I'm going to make them face every mistake, every dismissal, every time they chose him over me. I squared my shoulders. And then I'm going to walk away and let them live with the consequences of their choices. That's my girl, Ryder grinned. Need backup? Always. I picked up my suitcase. Time to show them who their useless daughter really is. The familiar streets of my hometown felt smaller now, each turn bringing back memories I'd tried to forget. I pulled into the coffee shop where I'd worked during high school, now transformed into a sleek cafe. A perfect place for my first meeting with Makey. He was already there, occupying the corner table like he owned it. Same confident posture, same expensive watch, but his eyes held a desperation I'd never seen before. Little sister. He stood to hug me. I stepped back. Let's skip the pretense, Makey. What do you want? His smile faltered as we sat down. Can't I just want to see my sister? After 3 years of silence, try again. A waitress approached. I ordered black coffee. Meki asked for some complicated specialty drink that wasn't even on the menu, then acted surprised when they couldn't make it. Things are complicated, he finally said, settling for regular coffee. Mom probably told you about the business. She told me you made some bad investments. Ryder told me the truth. His face darkened at Ryder's name. Your business partner should keep his nose out of family matters. Family matters? I laughed. Like when you forged Dad's signature on those loans? Coffee forgotten, Makey leaned forward. Listen, I can explain everything. I had a plan. The investments were solid, but the market... Save it. I pulled out my phone, showing him the documentation Ryder had gathered. Casino receipts? Luxury car leases? That was your solid investment plan? I was networking, building relationships with clients. You wouldn't understand. You've always been so small-minded about these things. Small-minded. I felt my voice rising. I built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing while you were gambling away our parents' retirement. An elderly couple at the next table looked over. I lowered my voice. How much did you really lose, Makey? He wouldn't meet my eyes. 4.2 million. Jesus Christ. I sat back, stunned. Does Dad know? Not everything. Look, I can fix this. I just need some capital to what? Double down? Hit the tables again? I have connections, he insisted. One good deal could turn everything around. But I need your help. Just a small loan, say $500,000. I'll pay you back double within 6 months. The same confident smile he'd always used to get his way. It probably still worked on our parents. No. His smile vanished. What? I said no. I'm not giving you money. Come on, Isabel, we're family. You can't just... Family? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Where was family when I needed help with college? When I was working 60-hour weeks to start my business? When I invited you all to my company's launch party and you didn't show because you had a golf game? That's not fair. I was networking, building relationships. I grabbed my purse. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, you're going to tell Mom and Dad everything. Every loan, every forged signature, every penny you stole, or I will. He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. You wouldn't dare. I yanked free. Try me. I'm not that scared little girl anymore, Meki. You can't bully me into submission. You think you're so much better than me now? He stood towering over me like he used to. With your fancy company and your business partner, I made one mistake. One mistake? You destroyed our family's legacy. The business Dad spent 30 years building. Gone because you couldn't admit you had a problem. People were definitely staring now. Meki's face had turned red. You know what? His voice was low, dangerous. Maybe if Mom and Dad had given you the business instead of me, none of this would have happened. Is that what you want to hear? That you were right all along? What I want, I said quietly, is for you to face what you've done. No more manipulation, no more lies. My phone buzzed, a text from Ryder. All set for tomorrow's meeting with your parents. Documents ready. Tomorrow at noon, I told Makey. Dad's office. Either you tell them or I will. He called after me as I walked away, but I didn't turn back. Outside, I leaned against my car, hands shaking as I dialed Ryder's number. How'd it go? He asked. 4.2 million, Ryder. He lost $4.2 million. Jesus, that's more than we thought. He wanted me to loan him $500,000 more, said he could double it in 6 months. Ryder was quiet for a moment. You okay? I watched through the window as Makey ordered another coffee, his hands shaking as he reached for his wallet. Yeah, I said. For the first time in my life, I think I am. Dad's office still smelled like leather and coffee, but the usual bustle of employees was gone. Empty desks stretched across the floor, personal items already cleared out. My heels clicked against the hardwood as I made my way to the conference room. Isabel, Mom rushed to hug me. I kept my arms at my sides. Oh, sweetheart, thank you for coming. Dad stood by the window, looking older than I remembered. He turned, managing a weak smile. You look well. Success does that. I set my briefcase on the table. Where's Makey? Running late, Mom said quickly. Traffic, you know how it is. No. I checked my watch. He's not coming, is he? The silence answered my question. I pulled out my laptop and the documents Ryder had prepared. Well then, I guess I'll start. Start what? Dad asked, finally taking a seat. Isabel, if this is about the loan, this isn't about a loan. I connected my laptop to the projector. This is about the truth. The first slide appeared, a breakdown of the company's finances over the past 3 years. Red numbers dominated the screen. What is this? Mom's voice trembled. This is what your perfect son did to the family business. I clicked through the slides. Unauthorized loans, forged signatures, casino debts paid with company funds. Dad's face went pale. That's not possible. Makey wouldn't. Here's his signature on a loan for $800,000. Click. Here's your forged signature on another for $1.2 million. Click. And here's the casino's record of his losses over the past 18 months. Mom started crying. Dad just stared at the screen. The total damage, I continued, is $4.2 million. Not the $3 million he told you about. And that's not counting the legal implications of the fraud. Why are you doing this? Mom whispered. We asked for help, not this. Because you need to see what your favoritism created. I turned off the projector. You gave him everything. The business, the trust fund, your unconditional support, and he repaid you by destroying it all. We made mistakes, Dad admitted quietly. With both of you. No. I shook my head. You made choices. Every time you praised his mediocrity while ignoring my achievements. Every time you funded his failures while I worked my way through college. Those weren't mistakes. They were choices. The door opened. Makey stood there, tie askew, eyes bloodshot. Sorry I'm late, he mumbled. Just in time, I said. I was just showing Mom and Dad your creative accounting. He slumped into a chair. I was going to tell them. When? After you got another loan to gamble away? Makey, Dad's voice was barely audible. Is this true? All of it? Makey nodded, staring at the table. The investors are pulling out, I continued. The bank is calling in the loans. You have maybe 2 weeks before they force a liquidation. There must be something we can do, Mom pleaded. Isabel, your company is not your safety net. I closed my laptop. I'm not here to save the business. Then why are you here? Makey demanded. To gloat? I'm here because you need to understand something. I stood up, looking at each of them. Success isn't about who has the most natural talent, or who gets the most support, or who your parents believe in more. It's about what you do with what you have. I pulled out one final document, my company's latest valuation report. My company is worth $30 million. I built it while you were all telling me I'd never amount to anything, and I did it without stealing, lying, or gambling away other people's futures. So you're just going to let us lose everything? Makey asked. Your own family? No, I'm going to let you face the consequences of your actions. All of you. I gathered my things. But I will make you an offer. They leaned forward eagerly. I'll help you negotiate with the bank, help you salvage what's left of your reputation, but only if you agree to my terms. Anything, Mom said quickly. Makey goes to addiction counseling. Dad, you step down and let a professional management team handle the restructuring. And Mom, I met her eyes. You acknowledge, publicly, at the next family gathering, exactly how you treated me all these years. The room was silent except for Mom's quiet sobs. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. And if we don't, Makey asked, then you can explain to the board and the police where all that money went. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. You have until tomorrow to decide. Call me when you're ready to face reality. The sound of my heels echoed through the empty office as I walked away, leaving them to sit with their choices. I was having coffee at my old high school hangout when Milena walked in. 5 years hadn't changed her much. Same perfectly styled hair, same designer handbag. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Isabel, oh my God. She rushed over, arms outstretched. I heard you were back in town. Milena. I didn't stand for the hug. Let me guess. Makey told you? Her smile faltered slightly. Actually, yes. We've been seeing each other. Of course they had. My brother's ex-best friend's girlfriend, now his current flame. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sit, I gestured to the empty chair. I'm sure you have plenty to tell me. She settled in, fidgeting with her coffee cup. Look, about Makey, save it. I already know everything. No, you don't. She glanced around before leaning closer. I'm the one who sent the anonymous tip to the board about the missing money. That got my attention. What? I saw the receipts, Isabel. The casino visits, the wire transfers. He was spiraling and nobody would listen to me. She pulled out her phone, showing me texts from Mekki. He promised he'd stop, but he didn't. He said he had a system, that he just needed one big win to fix everything. She wiped away a tear. I tried to help him, but he just kept taking more and more. The waitress brought more coffee. I studied Milena's face, looking for any sign of deception. Why are you telling me this? Because I remember how they treated you, how we all treated you. She reached for my hand. I pulled back. I was there when your mom told everyone not to attend your business launch, said it would only encourage your delusions of grandeur. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We've discussed your terms. Please come to the house tonight. They're meeting tonight, aren't they? Milena asked. To discuss your offer? I looked up sharply. How do you know about that? Makey called me after your meeting. He was upset. She hesitated. He's not planning to accept your terms, Isabel. He thinks he can find another way. Another way to what? Steal more money? He mentioned something about offshore accounts, private investors. She pulled out a USB drive. That's why I brought you these. Bank statements, emails, everything I could find. I stared at the drive. Why now, Milena? Why help me after all these years? Because I was wrong. We all were. She stood up, gathering her things. And because someone needs to stop him before he hurts more people. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Does he know you're here? No, and he can't know. Please. Her eyes were pleading. Just be careful tonight. He's not the same person we grew up with. After she left, I plugged the drive into my laptop. Dozens of files appeared. Correspondence with shady investment firms, screenshots of gambling debts, and something that made my blood run cold. A draft email to my company's board of directors, full of fabricated allegations about my business practices. I called Ryder immediately. He's planning to sabotage my company, I said when he answered, trying to destroy my reputation before I can expose him. Jesus. Ryder paused. Want me to come over there? No, but have our lawyers ready, and call security. Make sure Mekki can't access our building. Already done. What about tonight? I looked at the time. 2 hours until the family meeting. I'm going, but first, I need to make a stop. The bank manager was expecting me. I'd called ahead. Ms. Walker? He smiled, shaking my hand. I understand you want to discuss your brother's accounts. Actually, I placed Milena's USB drive on his desk. I want to discuss fraud prevention. An hour later, I pulled up to my parents' house. Makey's car was already there, along with Dad's. Through the window, I could see them in the living room, heads bent together in discussion. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Milena. Whatever happens tonight, remember you're not the one who needs to be ashamed. I grabbed my briefcase and walked to the door. Before I could knock, it swung open. Mom stood there, eyes red from crying. Isabel, she said softly, please come in. We need to talk. Behind her, Makey sat in Dad's armchair, a familiar smirk playing on his lips. He thought he had a plan. He thought he could outmaneuver me one last time. He had no idea what was coming. I stepped inside, ready for the final confrontation. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought in the places we once called home. Before we start, I said, setting my briefcase on the coffee table, I had an interesting conversation with the bank today. Makey's smirk faltered slightly. We've discussed your terms, Mom interrupted, perched nervously on the edge of the sofa. And we think, no, let's hear what the bank had to say. Makey leaned forward, trying to maintain his composure. I'm sure it was fascinating. Oh, it was. I pulled out several documents, especially the part about the second set of books you've been keeping. The offshore accounts, the shell companies. Dad's head snapped up. What? Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I spread the papers across the table. Or did you think you could blackmail me into silence with those fake allegations you were planning to send to my board? Mom gasped. Mickey's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. Really? Should we call Milena? I'm sure she'd be happy to explain. He stood up so quickly his chair tipped over. You talked to Milena? She showed me everything, Mickey. The gambling debts, the fraudulent accounts, the plans to frame me for embezzlement if I didn't help you cover it up. You're lying. Am I? I pulled out my phone, playing a recording. Mickey's voice discussing offshore transfers with someone named Marcus. Dad put his head in his hands. Mom started crying again. It's not what it sounds like, Mickey insisted. I was trying to save the company. By stealing from it, by planning to destroy my reputation. I turned to our parents. Still think he deserves another chance? We could. Mom looked desperately between us. We could find a way to fix this, as a family. There's nothing to fix. I stood up. The bank has frozen all accounts pending investigation. The board has been notified and the police. I checked my watch. Should be here any minute. You called the police? Mom shrieked. On your own brother? No, Mom. The bank called the police on a criminal who happened to be my brother. Mickey lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You can't do this to me. Let go of me. My voice was steel. Or what? You'll call your precious Ryder? Have him save you again? Dad finally stood up. Mickey, let her go. Don't you see what she's doing? Mickey's grip tightened. She's destroying this family. No. I yanked free. You did that all by yourself. Blue lights flashed outside. Mom ran to the window. Please, she begged. Isabel, stop this. We can work something out. Like you worked it out when I needed you? When I begged for support, for acknowledgement, for just one moment of the attention you showered on him? We made mistakes. No, I cut her off. You made choices, and now you're all going to live with them. The doorbell rang. 2 police officers stood outside. Mr. Makey Walker? One called through the door. Makey looked wildly around the room like a trapped animal. Dad, please. Dad just shook his head, tears in his eyes. I'll destroy you, Makey hissed at me. Everything you've built will still be standing long after you're gone. I opened the door. Officers, he's in here. Everything happened quickly after that. The handcuffs, the rights being read, Mom's hysterical crying, Dad's silent tears. As they led Makey out, he turned back one last time. You think this makes you better than me? No, I met his eyes. I always was better than you. They just couldn't see it. After the police car pulled away, I gathered my things. What happens now? Dad asked quietly. Now? The company goes into receivership. You'll probably lose the house, your reputation. I shrugged. Well, that's already gone. And you? Mom's voice was small. Will you help us? I paused at the door. My offer stands. Professional management team. Public acknowledgement of how you treated me. And Mickey gets help. Real help. In prison or out. That's it? After everything we've done for you? I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Everything you've done for me? You mean like telling me I was worthless? Like choosing him over me at every turn? Like making me feel like I didn't deserve to exist in this family? They stood there, finally seeing me. Really seeing me, for the first time. I'll have my lawyers contact you tomorrow about the restructuring. I opened the door. Goodbye, Mom, Dad. Isabel, Dad called after me. I'm sorry, for everything. I didn't turn around. I know, but sorry isn't enough anymore. The door closed behind me with a final click, leaving them alone with the wreckage of their choices. 3 days after Makey's arrest, Mom called a family meeting at Aunt Sarah's house. The same house where, years ago, she'd first called me the useless daughter. Fitting, really. Ryder pulled up to the curb. You sure you want to do this? No. I smoothed my dress. But it's time. The living room was packed with relatives. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all the people who'd witnessed my humiliation over the years. They fell silent as I walked in. Isabel. Aunt Sarah hugged me awkwardly. We've all heard, the news about how my brother committed fraud, or about how I turned him in. More uncomfortable silence. Mom stood up from her spot on the couch. I called everyone here because Her voice cracked. Because we owe you an apology, Isabel. All of us. Mom? No, let me finish. She squared her shoulders. For years, we treated you like you were less than Meki. We dismissed your dreams, belittled your achievements, made you feel unwelcome in your own family. Uncle Robert shifted in his chair. Hallie, maybe this isn't the place. This is exactly the place. Dad cut in. This is where it started, isn't it? At that dinner when we all laughed at Isabel's business plans? I remembered that night. I'd presented my first business concept to the family, hoping for support. Instead, they'd turned it into a joke, passing around my carefully prepared proposal like it was a comedy script. We were wrong, Mom continued. So terribly wrong. While we were praising Mickey's failures, you were building something extraordinary, and we were too blind to see it. Too proud, Aunt Sarah corrected. We were too proud to admit we'd backed the wrong horse. I'm not here for apologies, I said, my voice steady. I'm here to set things straight. I pulled out my phone, pulling up the family group chat. Remember this thread from 3 years ago, when I invited everyone to my company's launch party? I started scrolling. 14 people said they were too busy. 8 didn't bother responding. Only Daria showed up. We didn't think, Uncle Robert started. That it would succeed? I finished. Or that it mattered. Well, let me show you what you missed. I connected my phone to the TV, starting a slideshow. Pictures of my company's growth. News articles about our success. Awards ceremonies they'd never attended. While you were all celebrating Maki's latest venture, I was building this. While you were covering up his mistakes, I was creating jobs. Real jobs for real people. The photos continued. My first office, the team growing, the new headquarters. Last week, before all this happened, we closed a deal worth $15 million. I let that sink in. That's 5 times what Maki lost, what your perfect son gambled away. Mom was crying openly now. Dad couldn't meet my eyes. But this isn't about money, I continued. It's about respect, about family, about choosing to see only what you wanted to see instead of what was really there. What do you want from us? Aunt Sarah asked quietly. Nothing. Not anymore. I turned off the TV. I'm not here for revenge or redemption. I'm here to show you exactly what you missed out on, what you threw away because you couldn't see past your own prejudices. Please, Mom stepped forward. Give us a chance to make it right. Make it right? I laughed. You can't make this right. You can't undo years of damage with one public apology. Then why are you here? Uncle Robert demanded. Because someone needs to say it. I looked around the room. Your golden boy is a fraud. Your perfect son is a criminal. And your useless daughter, she's the only one who can help you pick up the pieces. The silence was deafening. My lawyers will handle the restructuring of the company. Dad, you'll step down next week. A professional team will take over. I gathered my things, and Maki will get the help he needs, in prison. And us? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. What about us? I paused at the door, looking back at my family, really looking at them, the proud aunts and uncles who'd dismissed me, the cousins who'd followed Maki's lead in mocking my dreams, the parents who'd failed to see what was right in front of them. That's up to you. I opened the door. But know this. I'm done trying to prove myself to people who never wanted to see me succeed in the first place. Ryder was waiting outside. How'd it go? Exactly as expected. I got into the car. Take me home. As we drove away, I watched my family through the rearview mirror, still gathered in Aunt Sarah's living room, finally facing the truth about who they'd chosen to believe in, and who they'd chosen to ignore. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about walking away and letting people live with the consequences of their choices. The knock on my office door came just as I was finishing a conference call. Daria poked her head in. Someone here to see you, she said, her expression unreadable. It's Meki. I looked up sharply. Here? How did he? Released this morning. She stepped aside, revealing my brother in the doorway. He looked different, thinner. The designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a button-down shirt, the arrogance gone from his stance. Hey, sis. His voice was quiet. Got a minute? I nodded to Daria. She left, closing the door behind her. Nice office, Mickey said, looking around. Better than Dad's old one. What do you want? He sat down, hands clasped in his lap. I've been in therapy. Real therapy, not just the court-mandated stuff. Good for you. I learned something interesting. He met my eyes. About why I did what I did. Why I couldn't stand to see you succeed. Mickey, please, let me finish. He pulled out a folded paper from his pocket. I wrote this in therapy. Must have rewritten it 50 times. I took the letter but didn't open it. I was jealous, he continued. Not of your success, of your strength. You built something real, something lasting. All I did was pretend to be what everyone wanted me to be. You had every advantage, I said. Every opportunity. I know. And I wasted them all trying to live up to an image I couldn't maintain. He gestured to the letter. Read it, please. I unfolded the paper. His handwriting was different, less flashy, more honest somehow. Dear Isabel, I read aloud. I'm sorry. Not just for the money or the lies or the attempted blackmail. I'm sorry for every time I made you feel small to make myself feel big. For every dream I mocked because I was afraid you'd achieve it. For every moment I stole from you because I couldn't stand in my own spotlight. My voice cracked. I stopped reading. Keep going, he said softly. You were always the strong one, I continued reading. The brave one. While I was taking shortcuts and looking for easy wins, you were doing the real work, building something meaningful. I didn't hate you for being less than me. I hated you for being more than I could ever be. I set the letter down. Why are you really here, Mickey? Because I owe you more than an apology. He pulled out another document. This is my resignation from the family business. Complete divestment of my shares. I'm signing everything over to the restructuring team. You don't have to. Yes, I do. He placed the document on my desk. It's part of making amends. Real amends, not just words. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Is he there? They don't know you're here, do they? He shook his head. I needed to do this on my own. No safety net, no family pressure, just me. Finally being honest. I studied his face, looking for any trace of the old manipulation. Found none. What will you do now? Start over. Entry-level job at a friend's company, small apartment, learning to live with who I am, not who everyone wanted me to be. He stood up. I don't expect forgiveness, Isabel. I just needed you to know that I see you now. Really see you. As he turned to leave, I called out, Mickey? He paused. That friend's company, they need any investment advice? A small, genuine smile, so different from his old smirk. No, I'm working in their mailroom, learning what real work feels like. After he left, Ryder came in. Everything okay? I handed him Mickey's letter and resignation. What do you think? He read them carefully. Seems genuine. Prison changes people. Or maybe it just shows them who they really are. I picked up my phone, typing a response to Mom. He's gone, but he's okay. You think he'll make it? Ryder asked. I looked out my office window at Mickey, walking down the street, head high but shoulders relaxed. No pretense, no performance. Just a man finally learning to stand on his own. Yeah, I said. I think he will. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mickey. Thank you. Not for the money you didn't give me, but for the wake-up call I needed. You were always the best of us. I smiled, typing back, prove it. Not to me, to yourself. Sometimes redemption doesn't come in grand gestures or public apologies. Sometimes it comes in quiet moments of truth, in the courage to start over, in the strength to face who you really are. And sometimes, just sometimes, it comes in letting go of who you were supposed to become who you were meant to be all along.
When I married Andrew, he was working for my father, which was how we first met. Andrew and I decided that after our wedding, I would stay home, allowing me to delve into my hobbies like sewing and knitting. I cherished making him scarves and gloves every winter, gradually honing my skills until he proudly compared them to store-bought ones. This encouragement fueled my passion, and I envisioned sharing this hobby with our future child, a dream that brought smiles to both our faces. Andrew and I have been married for 6 years. Although we don't have children, we found happiness in our life together. Despite his demanding job, Andrew tries to carve out time for us on his days off, which means the world to me. However, there are moments when his work makes me feel somewhat isolated. 3 years ago, our tranquil life faced a challenge when I suddenly collapsed at home due to dizziness. Andrew rushed me to the hospital. I woke up to overhear him discussing my condition with the doctor. It was serious and something I would need to manage for the rest of my life, though not immediately life-threatening. The possibility of future episodes meant prolonged hospital stays were inevitable. Despite my anxiety, Andrew was there, reassuring me. During one of these hospital stays, I was reflecting on the many scarves and gloves I had knitted, now carelessly tossed aside, when Andrew, perhaps thoughtlessly, remarked, "I married you because you're the boss's daughter." His words stung deeply, awakening a realization within me. It was clear I needed to address this with him, to understand his true feelings, and to discuss how we could genuinely cherish our time together, just as we had planned in the early days of our marriage. Despite his reassurances, Andrew's comforting words during my hospital stay only partially eased my concerns. He held my hand, telling me not to worry and promising to visit whenever he could take time off from work. With him by my side, I felt a flicker of hope that everything might turn out okay, even though there were no guarantees. True to his word, Andrew initially visited almost every day. He would check on me, hold my hand, and even bring my favorite sewing tools to help me pass the time. Teaching him to sew became a delightful way to while away the hours, making the monotony of hospital life bearable. We chatted about daily trivialities and stitched together, enjoying each other's company. However, after about a year, these visits became less frequent. Andrew's presence dwindled from daily to only every few weeks. I assumed he was swamped with work and continued my sewing, focusing on a scarf I planned to give him during his next visit. Anticipating my discharge by the year's end, I also started knitting gloves to accompany the scarf, pouring all my affection and longing into each stitch. The day he finally showed up again, I eagerly presented him with the gloves, only to be met with a cold stare. "Are you still making these?" "It's annoying," he said bluntly, pushing the scarf I had made, still pristine and untouched, back into my hands along with divorce papers. His words cut deeper than any physical pain could. Andrew explained that he couldn't continue taking care of me, suggesting it was time for us to part ways. The divorce papers were already signed by him, signaling the end of our journey together. Even though I had sensed a change in our relationship ever since his visits became sporadic, facing the reality was heart-wrenching. I had always tried to convince myself that he was merely caught up with work, but the Andrew I knew, the kind, attentive one, wouldn't have let work stop him from supporting me. When he stopped coming without any explanation, I knew something was amiss. When I calmly asked him why he wanted a divorce, it wasn't because I was desperately clinging to our relationship. I realized I might have become a burden to him, and if the compassionate Andrew I married truly wanted this, I was ready to let go. This acceptance was painful but necessary, as it was clear the life we once dreamed of sharing was no longer possible. As Andrew's visits became sparse, I found myself grappling with the realization that the partnership he once promised seemed a distant memory. When I finally mustered the courage to ask him why he had changed so drastically, his response was shockingly blunt. "Isn't it obvious? Ever since I married you, it's been one problem after another. I'm so tired of those scarves and gloves you make every year. Honestly, I only married you because your dad was my boss," he confessed with a harsh laugh that felt like a slap. His words revealed a deep-seated resentment towards the simple joys I cherished in our life together, joys that he now mocked as trivial and embarrassing. As Andrew vented his frustrations, I couldn't help but notice the luxurious, finely made scarf wrapped around his neck, a scarf I had not crafted. It dawned on me that perhaps he had never appreciated any of the gifts I had lovingly made. Maybe they had always been nothing more than an annoyance to him, a realization that stung deeply. After I fell ill and my father retired, it became painfully clear that Andrew no longer felt the need to maintain the facade of a caring husband at his workplace. During the first year of my illness, he had diligently visited, possibly to preserve his image at work, where he was often lauded for his dedication to his sick wife. This facade of a supportive spouse seemed to benefit him professionally, enhancing his reputation among colleagues. When I confronted him about this, pointing out how his visits seemed more about maintaining his image than genuine concern, Andrew was momentarily taken aback. He then sheepishly admitted that my condition had indeed made things easier for him at work. This candid acknowledgement confirmed my suspicions. To Andrew, my worth had been tied not to our shared life or the love I thought we had, but rather to how my situation could serve his interests. This harsh reality was a turning point, helping me see the vast gap between the life we had promised each other and the one we were living. Throughout my illness, Andrew had seemingly capitalized on the sympathy and goodwill of others. He confessed quite candidly how mentioning my condition at work garnered him extra praise for his supposed dedication and readily granted him breaks whenever he needed them. If I worked late, everyone praised me for being so dedicated, and if I needed a break, all I had to say was my wife is sick, he explained without a trace of remorse. His tone was almost boastful as he added that my illness had inadvertently paved the way for his upcoming promotion, dismissing his colleagues as fools who were easily manipulated by his story. As he spoke, I saw not the man I had loved, but a stranger with a cruel smile, revealing his true nature. Resigned and realizing the extent of his deceit, I quietly accepted the reality of our situation. Well, if my illness was useful to you, then that's something. We probably won't see each other again, so take care, I said calmly, handing him the divorce papers. He barely glanced at them before taking them and leaving quickly, marking the end of our marriage. After he left, the weight of it all came crashing down, and I cried alone. Soon after, I was discharged from the hospital and returned to my parents' home. My father was furious when he learned how Andrew had exploited my condition for his gain. I never expected him to act like this, he exclaimed, shocked by Andrew's actions. By then, however, I had come to terms with the end of our marriage and reassured my father, telling him that I wished to stay with them for a while. My parents were supportive, encouraging me to do whatever made me happy, which at that moment meant being with family. Before moving back with my parents permanently, I decided to visit our old house, only to discover that the front door lock was broken. Confused, we rang the doorbell and were greeted by a stranger. He informed us that he had bought the house a few months earlier and was now living there with his family. Although my parents were outraged, I chose not to cause any trouble for the new residents and left quietly. Unable to let go of the matter, I called Andrew to confront him about the house. He nonchalantly confirmed, "Yeah, I sold it while you were in the hospital, keeping the money as my compensation. It was my house originally." His response was yet another blow, but by then I had already braced myself for his selfish actions and focused on rebuilding my life without him. Andrew's indifferent tone as he mentioned the sale of our house left me deeply sighing. I had only just found out that he had sold our home about a year ago, around the same time his visits and concern for me began to wane. It was shocking to learn he had made such a significant decision without even a discussion, especially since we were still technically married and had yet to finalize the division of our assets. Though the divorce papers were signed, we had planned to meet the following week to settle these matters, but Andrew had preemptively acted on his own, which was astounding. When I confronted him over the phone, trying to maintain my composure, I told him, "You didn't understand anything." His response was a confused, "What do you mean?" I simply replied, "I'll explain next week," and hung up. Turning to my concerned parents, I managed a smile and asked my father for a favor. I outlined my plans and requested his help to prepare everything. "I've already prepared all the necessary documents. There's not much time before our meeting next week, but we'll manage," my father assured me with a slightly worried smile. As my father, he likely felt a mix of guilt for having introduced me to Andrew and anger towards him. His determination to support me was palpable, and I was grateful for it. As the day of the meeting approached, I found myself unexpectedly smiling at the thought of Andrew's reaction to the preparations we were making. We decided to hold the meeting at my parents' house. My parents and I sat on one side, facing Andrew across from us. Despite knowing how much pain the divorce had caused my parents, Andrew appeared utterly indifferent, even displaying a slight smirk at times. His demeanor was not just unapologetic, but outright disrespectful and arrogant, which only solidified my resolve. At that moment, seated beside my parents, I felt the weight of the injustice he had done to me, but also a sense of empowerment from the support of my family as we prepared to face him together. As the discussion unfolded, I maintained a calm demeanor, assuring Andrew, "I don't plan to ask for too much." He attempted to appear generous, stating that the money from selling the house would suffice. This claim visibly angered my father, but I gently touched his hand to soothe him, signaling that we had the upper hand in this discussion and there was no need to escalate our emotions. "Before we proceed, there's something important we need to address," I said, and my father handed me a document. I held it out for my husband to see. "The house was indeed in your name, but the land it stands on belongs to my father, who holds the title," I explained calmly. My husband's face showed a slight frown. "So what? The house was still mine. No one can complain. Do you think this gives you a way to get back at me?" He chuckled, dismissive of the implications. "It's true you legally sold the house," I acknowledged. "However, since the land is still owned by my father, this poses a significant issue for the family who purchased the house," I continued, outlining the predicament. "You sold the house, yes, but as the landowner, my father could theoretically demand rent from the family currently living there. Wouldn't that cause them considerable trouble?" I paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. "We're not planning to take that step. However, we can't simply relinquish our rights to the land without compensation. We plan to offer the family the opportunity to purchase the land. We won't force them out or charge rent monthly, but it would be problematic if they refused to buy." I explained further. "Originally, my father intended this land as a gift for us to build our life on, not to be sold off to strangers without consideration. If the family who bought the house refuses to purchase the land, they might even sue you, misled into thinking they had full ownership of their new home. Imagine their frustration, thinking they had bought their dream home, only to find out about additional, unexpected expenses. With the ownership of the land confirmed, we promptly visited the family who had bought the house to discuss these issues and find a fair resolution. This approach not only protected my family's interests, but also showed consideration for the unwitting buyers, aiming to prevent further conflict and distress. When we laid out the situation to the new homeowners, they were quite understanding but firm. They recognized that any legal complications arising from the sale would fall on the seller, my husband, Andrew. They even mentioned the possibility of suing him if we couldn't reach a satisfactory agreement. Observing Andrew's pale face, I could tell he grasped the gravity of what was at stake. He could face severe financial repercussions. In a shaky voice, he asked, "What should I do?" I responded with a slight smile. The family could buy the land from us, which would settle everything smoothly. However, you'll need to cover the cost. Once they own both the house and the land, all current issues will be resolved. I continued, explaining the complications further. Given that they were unaware of the land's full value when they purchased the house, they might demand compensation from you. That decision is theirs to make. Also, the land is in a prime location, potentially worth more than the house itself. Even if you sold all your assets, it might not cover the costs. Alternatively, you could choose to buy back the house and cover the cost of the land, along with a relocation fee for the family. This would return both the house and land to your possession, and you could attempt to resell them. though after paying the relocation fee, any profit would likely be minimal. I paused to let the information sink in before addressing another point. And regarding alimony, your actions have caused me considerable emotional distress. I intend to seek compensation for that, so keep that in mind. You've used me as a pawn for your career ambitions, and now that I see this clearly, I'm disgusted by everything you've done. I plan to pursue damages for the emotional distress it's caused me. While evidence may be limited and a victory uncertain, discussing this matter is crucial given your current predicament. My father, though retired, chimed in with a stern tone. I still have many connections from my career. I've been in touch with former colleagues who have shared your opinions and actions regarding my daughter. You're being looked down upon by everyone, Andrew. He shared this with a cheerfully grim smile, which finally seemed to make Andrew realize the seriousness of his situation. The combined pressure of potential legal and financial consequences, coupled with the loss of his professional reputation, cornered Andrew, forcing him to face these harsh realities head-on. The status he had built at work, using me as a stepping stone, was now crumbling around him. Sitting confidently across from Andrew, I clasped my hands together, my smile radiant and unlike any he had seen from me before, especially since our separation. "Let's discuss what happens next," I began, my voice steady and assured. Andrew, caught up in the gravity of the situation, managed only a strained laugh, his eyes brimming with tears. As the negotiations unfolded, it was clear that the advantage was mine. Andrew agreed to pay alimony and also to compensate for the land where our house once stood. We later explained this arrangement to the family who had bought the house, ensuring they were treated fairly and understood the new terms. In the end, the results were favorable for everyone except Andrew, who found himself losing everything. The rumors my father had subtly spread throughout his company compounded his losses, eroding his status and halting any chances of a promotion. As these rumors persisted, Andrew became increasingly isolated, culminating in his resignation from the company, an outcome my father later shared with me. There's a temptation to view all this as karma. The gains Andrew thought he had secured through exploitation proved to be ephemeral, crumbling under the weight of his actions. Now, back at my parents' home, I've found solace and a new purpose in teaching sewing classes. While my classes are modestly attended by local women and children, the joy and fulfillment I derive from sharing my skills have brought me a profound sense of happiness. This unexpected turn in my life has shown me that even without having children of my own, a dream I once shared with Andrew, I can still impart my passion and experience in ways that enrich my life and those around me. This, more than anything, has taught me about the resilience of the human spirit and the unexpected paths to fulfillment. The clattering and banging erupted at the front gate. My husband was fuming and pounding on the door. "Are you serious? Let me in right now. Do you want the whole neighborhood to witness this scene?" It was a chilly Christmas evening, and here he was, creating a ruckus outside my family's home. Christmas usually brought us together in celebration, but this year was marred by a heartbreaking discovery I had made just days earlier. I stumbled upon an envelope that exposed my husband's infidelities. As a wife and a mother, I felt betrayed and hopeless. He claimed he was working late, but in truth, he was squandering our savings on his affair, barely spending on gifts for our children. Unable to bear the pain any longer, I flung open the door and confronted him right there, my family standing by. The air was tense. "What's happening?" he asked, feigning ignorance. Life as an ordinary housewife living with my husband and our 2 kids seemed straightforward until then. Depending on cultural or personal values, some might juggle their relationships, spending Christmas Eve with a lover and Christmas Day with family. My siblings and I grew up in a household that didn't stick to conventional celebration dates. Owing to our parents' demanding jobs, we created our tradition of celebrating Christmas during winter break, cooking together, enjoying cake, and watching special year-end TV shows. As I grew older and started my own family, Christmas Eve initially remained a joyful celebration with my husband and our child. However, as years passed, the essence of our relationship shifted from romantic to a more family-focused dynamic. Christmas Eve gradually became less about us and more about ensuring our children's happiness. We adapted, agreeing that the kids' joy was paramount. So, when my husband casually mentioned he might be stuck at work overnight on the 28th, it didn't strike me as odd at first. It seemed like another twist in our evolving holiday traditions. I wasn't overly emotional about it, but the discovery of his betrayal changed everything, turning our holiday into a moment of stark confrontation and revelation. When I realized my husband wouldn't be home for Christmas Eve, it just highlighted how much our relationship had evolved. Despite the changes, my affection for him remained deep, and I found contentment in our shared life. Thus, I devoted myself to preparing a joyful Christmas for our kids, embracing it as another form of happiness. Is this all we have for living expenses this month? Did something happen with your paycheck? I asked, trying not to sound too critical. With the end of the year approaching, expenses always seem to multiply, and I was hoping we could stretch our budget further with Christmas just around the corner. I was stunned to discover that the money my husband had allocated for living expenses was notably less than usual. I gently prodded him. If there was a way I could manage with this, I would have. Things are tight on my end too. There are work-related expenses and upfront costs for the new year. Do you think I enjoy having to cut back this much? Navigating our budget with limited resources had become an essential part of my role as a housewife. My husband, visibly stressed, avoided further discussion. You're right, I'm sorry, I'll do my best, but remember, it's almost Christmas and the kids are looking forward to their presents. Let's try to make this season special for their sake. I don't want us to fall short of affording their gifts. In our family, we usually have a rule. If the kids want something, they must explain why they need it. However, for birthdays and Christmas, they are free to ask for anything. That's why I was adamant about ensuring we had sufficient funds for their wishes, considering their deep love for Christmas. Let's be a bit more cautious with our spending, I suggested. Kids, what do you want for Christmas? My husband sighed and gathered the kids. I want a cartoon DVD set, but I also want a picture book about trains, Dad. Which one do you think is better? The book, definitely. It will help you learn to read, and you can share it with your friends. You could even read it to your younger friends. You'd be such a cool big boy. I really want a new doll set so I can feed it and sleep with it, but my crayons broke recently and now I can't draw, our daughter chimed in, a little troubled. I think crayons would be great, Carol. You're so talented at drawing, I encouraged, hoping to balance their wishes with our budget constraints. The simple yet profound joys of parenting shone through these moments as we navigated the season's challenges together. As I watched my daughter sketch, I encouraged her, ask Santa for some nice crayons, even better than the ones you had before. But she was also eyeing a new doll set. But what about the dolls? Can't you listen to what I want? Santa only visits good children. Naughty kids who are selfish get nothing. I reassured her, let's ask for the crayons first. While I tried to balance the children's wishes, my husband nudged them towards more affordable options. Brian's gift can come from a used bookstore, and Carol's gift can be from the store, he suggested quietly, implying that this approach would help us avoid overspending during the festive season. Do you think spending money is the only solution? How foolish, he murmured under his breath, making sure only I could hear. Labeling our children's eagerly awaited gifts as mere extra expenses, he subtly steered their young minds to fit his frugal agenda, which started to sow seeds of resentment in me. One evening, as my husband bathed, our daughter came running with a sparkly envelope she found in his work bag. Mom, look! Could it be from Santa? Although it was wrong for her to rummage through his things, my curiosity was piqued. I told her, you shouldn't have taken that without asking. Give it here and I'll put it back. But when I took the envelope, curiosity overcame me and I peeked inside. It was a reservation for a Christmas dinner for 2 at a hotel on the 28th, the night he was supposedly working. Questions and doubts flooded my mind. Just then, a notification pinged from my husband's phone. Startled, I glanced over. It was getting a flurry of messages. Normally I wouldn't pry, but unease compelled me to check. All the messages were from someone named Tiffany, accompanied by heart emojis and a profile picture of a woman much younger than myself. The pieces began to fall into place, painting a troubling picture. With each passing day, I found myself sneaking glances at his phone, confirming my suspicions. Tiffany was likely his mistress, and he planned to spend Christmas Eve with her, even hinting at a special gift. Driven by a mix of hurt and determination, I hired a private investigator. Catching my overly confident husband in the act seemed the only way to confront this painful reality squarely. The days leading up to Christmas were filled with a mix of dread and resolve, as I prepared to face whatever truths the investigation would uncover. When the investigation results arrived, they confirmed my worst fears. Tiffany was an employee at my husband's company, and their affair had started just a month ago. All those late nights he claimed to be working were spent with her. The sudden reduction in our household funds was likely funneling into his affair. Holding the investigator's report, tears of frustration and betrayal spilled over. In just a month, my husband had shifted his priorities so drastically, favoring another woman over his own family. My diligent care for our home, under the belief that he was burdened with work, and our children's quiet longing for time with their father, now seemed tragically misplaced. The revelation of his betrayal was too profound to overlook. Initially, I was paralyzed by the shock, but soon determination took hold. I wasn't going to let this go without taking action. Drying my tears, I channeled my energy into planning a decisive response. On the morning of December 28th, I maintained a normal front as I sent my husband off to work, but once he was gone, I took the kids and moved to my parents' house. "It's been so long since we've all been together like this," my mom exclaimed as we arrived. The festive spirit at my parents' home was uplifting. We spent the day decorating a large Christmas tree and enjoying a joyous Christmas party. The next morning, the children were overjoyed by the gifts under the tree, a DVD and a picture book for my son, and a doll and crayons for my daughter, all presented as gifts from Santa and also from their grandparents. As the children played happily with their new toys, the adults watched with content smiles. Then my phone buzzed. Stepping outside to answer, I heard my husband's distressed voice. "Hey, where are you? I just got home from work, but my key doesn't fit the lock and the doorbell isn't working. What's going on?" I could hear him fumbling with the door handle through the phone. "Calm down, you're making a lot of noise. No one is there because we don't live there anymore. We finished moving out yesterday. You were too busy with work to notice. And by the way, if you keep shaking that door, it might break. If it breaks, it's not my problem," I replied, a mix of sternness and mockery in my voice. As I watched my daughter sketch, I encouraged her, "Ask Santa for some nice crayons, even better than the ones you had before." But she was also eyeing a new doll set. "But what about the dolls? Can't you listen to what I want? Santa only visits good children. Naughty kids who are selfish get nothing." I reassured her, "Let's ask for the crayons first." While I tried to balance the children's wishes, my husband nudged them towards more affordable options. "Brian's gift can come from a used bookstore, and Carol's gift can be from the store," he suggested quietly, implying that this approach would help us avoid overspending during the festive season. "Do you think spending money is the only solution? How foolish," he murmured under his breath, making sure only I could hear. Labeling our children's eagerly awaited gifts as mere extra expenses, he subtly steered their young minds to fit his frugal agenda, which started to sow seeds of resentment in me. One evening, as my husband bathed, our daughter came running with a sparkly envelope she found in his work bag. "Mom, look, Could it be from Santa? Although it was wrong for her to rummage through his things, my curiosity was piqued. I told her, "You shouldn't have taken that without asking. Give it here and I'll put it back." But when I took the envelope, curiosity overcame me, and I peeked inside. It was a reservation for a Christmas dinner for two at a hotel on the 28th, the night he was supposedly working. Questions and doubts flooded my mind. Just then, a notification pinged from my husband's phone. Startled, I glanced over. It was getting a flurry of messages. Normally I wouldn't pry, but unease compelled me to check. All the messages were from someone named Tiffany, accompanied by heart emojis and a profile picture of a woman much younger than myself. The pieces began to fall into place, painting a troubling picture. With each passing day, I found myself sneaking glances at his phone, confirming my suspicions. Tiffany was likely his mistress, and he planned to spend Christmas Eve with her, even hinting at a special gift. Driven by a mix of hurt and determination, I hired a private investigator. Catching my overly confident husband in the act seemed the only way to confront this painful reality squarely. The days leading up to Christmas were filled with a mix of dread and resolve as I prepared to face whatever truths the investigation would uncover. When the investigation results arrived, they confirmed my worst fears. Tiffany was an employee at my husband's company, and their affair had started just a month ago. All those late nights he claimed to be working were spent with her. The sudden reduction in our household funds was likely funneling into his affair. Holding the investigator's report, tears of frustration and betrayal spilled over. In just a month, my husband had shifted his priorities so drastically, favoring another woman over his own family. My diligent care for our home, under the belief that he was burdened with work, and our children's quiet longing for time with their father, now seemed tragically misplaced. The revelation of his betrayal was too profound to overlook. Initially, I was paralyzed by the shock, but soon, determination took hold. I wasn't going to let this go without taking action. Drying my tears, I channeled my energy into planning a decisive response. On the morning of December 28th, I maintained a normal front as I sent my husband off to work, but once he was gone, I took the kids and moved to my parents' house. "It's been so long since we've all been together like this," my mom exclaimed as we arrived. The festive spirit at my parents' home was uplifting. We spent the day decorating a large Christmas tree and enjoying a joyous Christmas party. The next morning, the children were overjoyed by the gifts under the tree: a DVD and a picture book for my son, and a doll and crayons for my daughter, all presented as gifts from Santa and also from their grandparents. As the children played happily with their new toys, the adults watched with content smiles. Then, my phone buzzed. Stepping outside to answer, I heard my husband's distressed voice. "Hey, where are you? I just got home from work, but my key doesn't fit the lock and the doorbell isn't working. What's going on?" I could hear him fumbling with the door handle through the phone. "Calm down. You're making a lot of noise. No one is there because we don't live there anymore. We finished moving out yesterday. You were too busy with work to notice. And by the way, if you keep shaking that door, it might break." "If it breaks, it's not my problem," I replied, a mix of sternness and mockery in my voice. I followed my parents to the front door, bracing for a confrontation. As my father swung the door open, my husband stood there, a defiant smirk on his face. "Long time no see, Dad," he said with a sly grin. But my father's response was icy. "It's not good to see you. Stop pretending we're friends. You're no longer a son to us, just someone who hurt our family," he interrupted sharply. My mother joined in, her tone harsh and unyielding. "Causing a scene at this hour? Do you even know what time it is? It's incredibly rude. The kids have been asleep for hours. You're not fit to be their father," she declared, staring him down with a stern glare that shocked my husband, accustomed as he was to her usual gentleness. I won't let my grandchildren witness this anymore. Leave now. You're a nuisance and no longer part of this family, my father-in-law stated calmly, his voice tinged with anger, making it unmistakably clear that it was time for my husband to go. Faced with the united front of my family, my husband's expression darkened, as if he might lash out. But before he could respond, my mother-in-law spoke up firmly. I'm calling the police right now. Seeing her reach for the phone, panic overtook him, and he fled the scene without uttering a single apology, a stark reminder of his true character. At that moment, I didn't shed any more tears. Instead, a profound sense of emptiness enveloped me, leaving me to ponder the purpose of all I had endured. How about some warm tea and then you can get some rest? My mother suggested gently, touching my shoulder with a comforting smile. The warmth and understanding from my family enveloped me as I retreated to my room, grateful for their unwavering support. Meanwhile, my now estranged husband, finding himself without a home, attempted to return to his parents' house, only to discover that they had changed the locks after hearing my side of the story. They turned him away, unwilling to let a stranger disrupt their peace. Left out in the cold, my husband finally grasped the gravity of his actions and the weight of his parents' words. Now, truly understanding the consequences, he expressed sincere regret and agreed to the terms of our divorce without a legal battle. I had a lawyer prepared just in case, but fortunately, the proceedings concluded smoothly. I began anew at my parents' house, a sanctuary for myself and my children. Here, amidst the challenges of balancing work and parenting, every day brims with purpose. Supported by the love and help of my parents, life is bustling but deeply fulfilling. Even though my marriage has ended and I will not see my ex-husband again, I maintain a strong connection with my former in-laws. They are wonderful grandparents, offering not just love to my children, but also tremendous support to me. Despite the official documents declaring us no longer family, I cherish their presence in our lives and hope they remain a constant, watching the children grow and flourish. Do you both have everything? Let's go. And don't forget to say goodbye to Grandma and Grandpa. I remind my kids as we get ready to leave their house. Bye, we call out, and I send a silent prayer for these peaceful, ordinary days to continue indefinitely. I look forward to celebrating next Christmas together, imagining the bright smiles on my children's faces as we gather around, a testament to our resilience and the new bonds we forged. This thought alone adds a lightness to my step, fueling my hope for many joy-filled years ahead. To mark his retirement, I'm organizing a special trip to Spain with our parents starting today. I'll be using your Platinum card for the expenses, so we can make the most of this celebratory trip. I hope you understand the urgency because we need to leave soon. I'm a bit confused. Can you clarify what you meant by using my card? Could you explain a bit more about the trip? Sorry, I must leave now, but we can discuss the details when I return. Just one heads up, though. The card might not work. Apparently, my husband Daniel already took it to fund a vacation with our parents. I've tolerated a lot from Daniel, but this time he's crossed the line. When he's back, he's going to regret his decision. My name is Angela, and at 35, I've carved out a successful career at a major company after graduating from a prestigious university. Despite being young, I earn enough to support not just Daniel, who's currently unemployed, but potentially a child as well, though we haven't started a family yet. We've been married for 4 years and are considering having kids. Despite my stable job and good income, I'm not entirely satisfied with my life. The idea of having a child is still just that, an idea. Meanwhile, Daniel's unemployment is a stark reality. Tonight, I'm not hungry because I snacked earlier, but that's a minor issue compared to Daniel's job situation. He didn't attend a job interview today. Instead, he stayed home browsing job sites. Daniel left his last full-time job a year ago and has since only taken up temporary part-time positions, quitting each one after a short period. He's currently looking at both full-time and part-time jobs. I keep encouraging him to focus on securing a full-time job. I understand there's a right time for everything, but I wish he could find stable employment soon. There's a reason he can't be pushed too hard since he left his last job, but it's high time he settled into a steady role. Daniel had a tough fallout at his last job due to a disagreement over work policies. He initially stood his ground against his boss, backed by his colleagues. However, as tensions heightened, his coworkers shifted their allegiance back to the boss, leaving Daniel isolated. Feeling betrayed and unsupported, he found it increasingly difficult to continue at the company and ultimately resigned. Post-resignation, Daniel retreated into himself, spending most of his time alone in his room. After a couple of weeks, he began to re-engage with daily life, helping around the house. Despite making jokes about having plenty of time on his hands, his smiles didn't quite reach his eyes. It took another 3 weeks for Daniel to start job hunting again. He felt optimistic about interviews and was determined to make a fresh start, but the job search proved more challenging than anticipated. Despite his efforts and qualifications, rejections piled up, which he attributed to his contentious departure from his previous job. This left him feeling discouraged and questioning his worth. The cycle of rejection affected Daniel deeply, leading to a sense of defiance and hopelessness. One day, I came home to find shredded resumes all over the living room floor. It was clear his recent interview hadn't gone well. I approached the situation cautiously, suggesting he throw away the torn papers. Daniel then expressed a desire to stop job hunting altogether, questioning the point of it all since we could manage my salary alone. While some thrive as full-time homemakers, this wasn't what Daniel envisioned for himself. It seemed more like an escape from facing his job search challenges. Recognizing his struggle and the impact of his last job experience, I decided to give him space and support, hoping he would find his way. In the meantime, we needed to have a serious conversation about our future and his career plans, as the situation wasn't sustainable in the long term. I've always been dedicated to my work, so this extended break isn't just about idling away. It's meant to be a period of preparation for what comes next. It's reassuring to hear that you're focusing on the future. Living close to my in-laws, Daniel's mom Helen, and dad Peter has its dynamics. They started visiting more frequently after Daniel quit his job, likely concerned about him. When they heard he was gearing up for his next career move, they seemed visibly relieved, but the reality was quite different. "The beer's running low. Can you pick some up on your way home?" I asked one evening. "Again? You're drinking too much. Try to cut back a bit," I suggested gently. "Fine, I won't ask again. I'll get it myself," Daniel responded somewhat tersely. Despite appearances, Daniel wasn't preparing for a new job. His days were mostly filled with TV and beer. I suspect he was embarrassed about his unemployment, and I chose not to disclose the full extent of it to his parents, to protect his feelings. After more than 4 months without any job-seeking activity, I felt it was time to address the elephant in the room. "Daniel, maybe it's time to start looking for work again. You seem more settled now," I ventured. "What? It's only been 7 months since my last job. You want me to work again after what happened?" he replied, his tone mixed with disbelief and irritation. "I just think the break has been quite long. Let's not drag this out," I pressed, only to be met with, "Stop nagging. You can't understand my feelings when your job is going well. I have my struggles, you know. Everyone faces work problems and relationship issues." Despite the tension, Daniel agreed to start job hunting, which felt like a step forward. Though he walked out during our conversation, clearly upset by our exchange. When Daniel calmed down, I planned to apologize, hoping to ease the tension. His next update caught me off guard. "I got a job because you pushed me," he said one day, a mix of reluctance and acknowledgement in his voice. "That's great. Where?" I asked. "At a nearby supermarket," he replied, adding, "So you'll need to learn and work hard, right?" His response was dismissive. It's just part-time, no need to work too hard. Whether part-time or full-time, I believe any job is significant, but I held back further comment, deciding instead to see how this step might help him regain his footing. "I'm home," Daniel announced one day, not long after. "You're back early. How's the job going at the pub?" I inquired, mixing up his actual workplace. "I quit the supermarket job. A college student there was being bossy, always telling me where to put the boxes in storage. It felt like harassment," he explained, frustration evident. The student was likely just instructing him on the proper procedures, a common practice in any job setting, but Daniel's pattern of finding and quitting jobs continued unabated. It became clear that Daniel's challenges with maintaining employment were deeper than just finding the right job. It's been a year since our last serious discussion about work, and Daniel now tells me he's working part-time at a pub, an industry he's never tried before. He finds it fascinating and believes he might have discovered his true passion. "Really? That's fantastic," I respond, though I can't help but worry about the financial aspect. "But isn't the income from a part-time job in a restaurant somewhat limited?" "That's okay," Daniel assures me, his eyes alight with a new kind of determination. "I'm currently apprenticing and aiming to become independent. I plan to own my place someday." "That sounds like a solid plan," I reply, genuinely pleased to see him with a goal. "Here, take this and treat yourself to something nice for once," I added, handing him some money to encourage his new venture. However, the reality behind Daniel's optimistic facade soon surfaces. Just 5 days after our conversation, he quits the pub job. Not only that, but he continues to deceive everyone, including his parents, from whom he accepts money under pretenses. This revelation is a harsh blow, and I find myself grappling with disappointment and frustration towards my husband. Determined to address the issue more directly than before, I seize an opportunity one evening as he watches a movie. "Hey, Daniel, let's talk," I say, reaching for the remote and pausing the movie. "It's frustrating when you pause at the best part." "What is it?" Daniel complains, clearly annoyed. "Daniel, you're 37 now, right? That's prime working age. Don't you think about the future, spending all day at home, drinking and just watching TV?" "The future? There are plenty of 37-year-olds not working." "Many people enjoy life without a job," he retorts defensively. "True, work isn't everything, but those people have something else they're dedicated to. Do you have something like that?" Yeah, I know you're upset about me not working. I'll look for another part-time job," Daniel replies, his tone dismissive but with a hint of concession. Although Daniel seems set on only working part-time, considering his history of quitting jobs and the underlying challenges he faces, I've been cautious about pushing him too hard. But now it's clear that it's time for Daniel to find some stability. One day while I was at work, I received an unexpected text from Daniel. "Dad's retiring, so we're going to Spain to celebrate starting today. I'm borrowing your platinum card. We're going to enjoy ourselves on your credit card." Alarmed, I call him immediately. "What do you mean a trip? Just what I said. I don't understand. Just what I said, please explain." The implications of his actions are manifold. Celebrating Peter's retirement is fine, but Daniel should have discussed the trip with me before using and essentially taking my money and credit card without asking. The thought that he might have told his parents he paid for it himself, using my credit card no less, fuels my anger and sense of betrayal. This situation is a stark reminder that despite some steps forward, deeper issues still need to be addressed. Daniel's recent actions brought us to a notable moment in our ongoing struggles with responsibility and communication. As we discussed his upcoming trip to Spain, Daniel mentioned something that caught my attention. "You mentioned borrowing a credit card. Do you mean the one from our house?" "Yeah, why?" he replied nonchalantly. "I own a platinum credit card. Contrary to popular belief, it's not just for those with high incomes. Factors like credit history and stable income play a part, and it's quite possible to secure one in your 30s. Despite its high annual fee, I find value in the benefits and points it offers. However, that credit card was supposed to be in my wallet." So, you took the credit card from home? I pressed. Yeah, so I'm counting on you for the payment, Daniel responded, a bit too cheerfully for the situation. His casual demeanor and readiness to depart made it clear he thought he had everything under control. But the truth was about to complicate his plans significantly. What are you waiting for? We need to leave, he urged, eager to get moving. Hold on, I interrupted. The credit card you took won't work. What? That can't be right. It's under Angela's name and it expires this month. It's close, but it shouldn't be an issue, he countered, disbelief creeping into his voice. You're lying, Angela. You're lying to stop me from using the card, aren't you? Daniel accused, his frustration mounting. Yes, it does expire this month, I admitted. That's why I've already received a new credit card. Sometimes when a new card is activated, the old one stops working. I've already started using the new card, so the one you took won't work. Are you kidding me? You think I'm lying? Daniel's voice was tinged with panic now. If you don't believe me, I can send you the URL to the credit card website, or you can just try using the card. It would be funny to see you try to pay with a card that doesn't work. This credit card really won't work, he muttered, more to himself than to me. I could hear his parents calling him in the background, but he seemed too flustered to respond. What should I do? I told them I'd pay for everything except the round-trip travel. Oh, they covered the flight? Yes, Dad felt bad about covering all the trip costs. Daniel explained, a hint of relief in his voice. What should I do? I'm about to take a cab and I don't even have money for that. That's not my problem, I responded firmly. You said you would pay for everything except the flight. Using my credit card in the first place was wrong. You should pay with your own money. How can I? I don't have any money right now, Daniel exclaimed, the reality of his predicament sinking in. Daniel, you haven't been taking work seriously, I concluded, the situation unfolding as a stark reminder of the broader issues at play. Daniel's reliance on deception rather than facing his responsibilities head-on led us to yet another crossroads. It all came to a head when Daniel tried to impress his parents by taking them on a trip without having any actual means to fund it. As I hung up the phone to return to my work, I left Daniel in a predicament where he would eventually need to confess to his parents about his financial deception. Later that evening, after my workday ended, I received a call from Helen, Daniel's mother. I heard from Daniel he tried to use your credit card and lied about working. I'm sorry for the trouble, she apologized. No, don't apologize, Helen. I'm sorry for the inconvenience with the credit card. Are you okay with the money? I asked, trying to smooth over the immediate concerns. We'll cover the cost of this trip. When we return, I'll make sure Daniel apologizes and starts looking for a job immediately, Helen assured me, though her voice carried a hint of worry. I appreciate that, Helen, but I'm considering divorcing Daniel, I confessed, letting the weight of my decision hang between us. Divorce? Because of this? Helen's surprise was evident, even though the phone. It's part of it, I admitted. Daniel has been taking money from me for a while. I stopped giving him money to limit his drinking. He got a part-time job and started buying his alcohol, but his salary couldn't cover his daily expenses. He's been taking money from my wallet to buy alcohol, sometimes just $10, sometimes $50. Over a year, it added up. When he took my credit card for this trip, it wasn't just about the money anymore. It made me realize he had no intention of changing. I understand. Should I inform Daniel about the divorce? Helen asked, her tone now somber. Could you just tell him I want a divorce? We'll discuss the rest when he gets home, I requested, hoping to manage the situation more personally once he returned. The next morning, Daniel called, likely having learned about the divorce from Helen, though I had asked her to wait. Feeling drained, I chose not to answer. That evening, when I returned home from work, I found Daniel had cut his trip short and was waiting for me in the living room. I'll start working seriously now. Please don't leave me, he pleaded, his apology seeming sincere. Seeing Daniel immediately apologize and display remorse was unexpected, but it came far too late. He had a whole year to change, yet here he was, asking for another chance now, after all my repeated warnings and the countless opportunities he wasted. I'm not going to give you another chance, Daniel. You gave up on me a long time ago. My decision is final. Can you leave? I said, standing firm in my resolve to move forward without him. The cycle of broken promises had to end, and with it, our path together. Please don't say that. If you won't leave, should I move out? Only if you can afford the rent here, I told Daniel, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. Daniel fell silent. The harsh reality of his financial instability and the looming divorce weighed heavily on him. He had no money for next month's rent, let alone a steady income to depend on. As the realization set in, he seemed to shrink before my eyes. With no options left, Daniel quietly left the house. I watched him go. A part of me wanted to offer help for transportation, but I reminded myself that Daniel isn't a child. He needs to manage his affairs. It was a sad moment seeing him depart under such strained circumstances. Later, after Daniel had gone to his parents' house, Helen called me. They had let him stay for the night, but told him he must leave the next day. They were worried that if he stayed longer, it might encourage his dependence on them. As tough as it was for them, they believed it was necessary for Daniel's development. When Daniel returned to our house, desperation was clear in his voice. "Please help me. I've got nowhere to go and no money," he pleaded. "That's the result of your actions. You need to handle this yourself," I responded firmly. Over the past year, all Daniel had done was neglect his responsibilities and do as he pleased. It was painful but necessary to deny him entry, turning him away right at our doorstep. The divorce proceedings, though tense, were expedited with the support of his parents. I'm not entirely sure what became of Daniel afterward. He's likely still hopping from job to job, crafting excuses for his situation. I thought I would feel lonely without Daniel, but I didn't. His presence had been a constant source of stress, always walking on eggshells to avoid upsetting him. Now, freed from the need to accommodate his whims, I've been living more comfortably. Unknowingly, our life together had become a burden, one I hadn't fully recognized until he was gone. Relieved of that weight, I now find myself living a lighter, more authentic life, no longer tethered to the needs and failures of someone else. After my divorce from Albert was finalized, I began a new chapter of my life by moving in with my daughter, Diana. About 8 months into this transition, an unexpected event occurred on one of my days off. I was enjoying some downtime at home with Diana when I received an unsettling phone call from my mother. She informed me that Albert and his mother had unexpectedly shown up at my parents' home without an invitation. Alarmed and curious, I quickly dressed and hurried over to my parents' house. Upon my arrival, I was surprised to find Albert and his mother seated on the living room sofa, apparently waiting for me. Confused about their presence, I asked, "Why are you here at my parents' house?" Albert's response caught me off guard as he demanded, "I want you to return the money you owe me. Let me introduce myself. I'm Judy, a 38-year-old office worker. I was married to Albert for 10 years, and we have a daughter, Diana, who is now in the 8th grade. We met on a blind date and instantly connected due to his warm, friendly, and cheerful demeanor. Our relationship progressed from high school sweethearts to life partners, and he proposed after we dated for a year. Our wedding was a joyous occasion, attended by my close-knit group of high school friends. We were all deeply intertwined in each other's lives, celebrating major milestones together. Over time, each friend from this cherished circle found their partner and got married, creating a tightly bound community of married couples. We were a happy family, and I always believed our home would be a sanctuary of love and support. As we matured, our close-knit group of friends transitioned from carefree singles to married adults, and soon after I announced my pregnancy, it seemed my friends followed suit. Before long, we had evolved into a circle of mothers, sharing in the joys and challenges of parenthood together. It felt as though we were navigating the waves of life side by side, and I was confident that our bond would last a lifetime. I cherished my dual roles as both a wife and a mother, and I was equally passionate about my career. After graduating from college, I secured a position in the planning and development department of a large corporation. My days were packed and the work was demanding yet fulfilling. Each day brought new lessons and challenges. One of my friends, a stay-at-home mom, once playfully teased me saying, "You're a workaholic, Judy, but you also manage to maintain a wonderful family life. It's almost as if you're living two lives." She admired my strength, though I often joked that I wished I had the boundless energy typical of a robust man. Both Albert and Diana played pivotal roles in helping me decompress after long days at the office. When I arrived home, I was greeted by Diana's bright, "Oh, Mommy, welcome home." Her youthful enthusiasm and warm hugs melted away the day's fatigue. Albert had transitioned to part-time work at a local cafe after Diana was born, allowing him to take on the primary responsibilities of picking her up from school and preparing dinner. This arrangement not only supported my career, but also ensured that I returned home to a freshly cooked meal, which was a tremendous relief. Albert's thoughtful cooking allowed me to unwind and feel rejuvenated. Evenings at home were a cherished ritual. Diana and I would often take baths together, chatting about our days and sharing little stories. This simple, everyday interaction was a source of immense joy and fulfillment. My life was a beautiful balance of professional achievements and home life bliss, all made possible by the unwavering support and kindness of Albert and Diana. Their support not only bolstered my energy, but also deepened my dedication and passion for my work. Together, we had crafted a life that was as rewarding as it was busy, proving that with the right support, one could indeed have it all. As my career progressed and I began to achieve significant results, I was rewarded with a promotion. With this new position came increased responsibilities, leading me to work more overtime and often arrive home quite late. By this time, Diana had grown older and had a better grasp of the demands of my job, which allowed her to manage more on her own. Meanwhile, Albert also increased his hours at the cafe, further immersing himself in the world of coffee. Lately, I have taken to exploring various coffee shops, indulging in their unique coffee beans, and even today I have brought home some beans along with cakes from a new bakery I discovered. I suggested we enjoy them together with coffee, excited to share this with Albert, who had become quite passionate about roasting and experimenting with different types of beans at his job. This made the coffee he brewed at home exceptionally good. Albert and Diana were both very supportive of my dedication to my career, but despite their understanding, I started to notice a gradual distancing within our family. The first sign that something was amiss came when Diana approached me with a concern. "What's up? You wanted to talk about something?" I asked her. "The other day when I went to see a movie with friends, I saw Dad with another woman," she revealed, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I was taken aback, shocked by her words. Diana continued, "They weren't holding hands or anything, but they seemed quite close. Lately, I've noticed Dad talking a lot on the phone before you get home. Sometimes he's so engrossed that he doesn't listen to me. He looks happy while he's on the phone. At first, I thought he was texting or talking to you, but after seeing him with that woman, I'm starting to wonder if he was talking to her instead." As she spoke, Diana's expression was filled with sadness. Being in middle school, she was acutely aware and sensitive to such matters, and it was clear she felt troubled by this observation. I was equally stunned. The thought that Albert, who I believed always prioritized Diana, might be involved with someone else was heartbreaking. This revelation required a careful and sensitive approach, as our family's unity was at stake. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I didn't realize we were making you feel this way. I've been too focused on work, haven't I?" I said, feeling a twinge of guilt as I looked at Diana. "No, it's okay that you work hard, Mom. Don't feel bad about that," Diana reassured me, her maturity at that moment beyond her years. I was touched by her understanding and compassion. "Thank you, Diana," I replied, my heart heavy. "I'll talk to your dad about this. If it turns out he's having an affair, I think I'll have to consider a divorce. Is that okay with you?" She nodded solemnly. "I don't like the idea of Dad having an affair. Just knowing that and still being with him would make me feel bad." Seeing Diana so distressed made me realize just how much I had overlooked our family's needs. Determined to address this head-on, especially since Diana had bravely brought it up, I decided to hire a private investigator to delve into Albert's activities. The findings were as shocking as they were conclusive. Albert was indeed having an affair, just as Diana suspected, and there was photographic evidence to prove it. What stunned me most was the identity of his affair partner, Tiffany, one of my high school classmates and a fellow member of our mom's group. I was more hurt by this betrayal from a trusted friend than by Albert's infidelity. Tiffany, a stay-at-home mom and supposedly a loyal friend in our group, had her young child, yet she was involved with Albert, neglecting her family commitments. Upon seeing the evidence, I was overwhelmed with emotion. Alone in my room, I was grateful that Diana hadn't walked in on me during this moment. The photos would have only added to her distress. I wasn't ready to confront Albert yet, nor could I let Diana see these disturbing images. I took a few deep breaths to compose myself. Shortly after, another friend from the mom's group mentioned she had changed jobs, which sparked an idea. I suggested a get-together, seeing it as a perfect opportunity to observe Tiffany without revealing that I knew about the affair. The gathering was set for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, I quietly contacted a lawyer and began preparing for a potential divorce, fortifying myself for the challenges ahead. I took a moment to gently inform Diana about what I had uncovered and the inevitable decision that her dad and I would be getting a divorce. Together, we spent our free time searching for a new apartment, trying to find a space that would signify a fresh start for us both. As the day of the planned get-together approached, I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. When the day finally arrived, I engaged in casual conversation with my friends, starting with asking about one friend's new job before we all shared updates on our lives. Tiffany seemed oblivious to the fact that I knew her secret. During the conversation, she lamented her routine life, saying, "I'm just a housewife stuck in the same routine. Unlike all of you who have careers. You don't have to work because your husband supports you," another friend pointed out. "I do appreciate my husband," Tiffany replied, "but sometimes I feel a little bored." It was then that I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. "So, is that why you're having an affair with other people's husbands?" I asked, turning directly to Tiffany. The room fell silent and the casual ambiance quickly shifted to tension. "Ah, Judy, what do you mean by that?" Tiffany stammered, her face draining of color. "It seems that Tiffany is having an affair with my husband, Albert," I declared plainly. "What? No way. You must be joking," another friend interjected, trying to defend Tiffany. Taking advantage of the disbelief, Tiffany tried to deflect. "That's right, Judy. What are you talking about all of a sudden? You must have confused me with someone else." "Oh, really?" I countered, my voice steady. "Then why don't you all take a look at this?" I reached into my bag, pulled out the photos, and spread them out on the table for everyone to see. The room erupted into gasps of disbelief. "Oh my gosh," they gasped, turning to Tiffany for explanations. Tiffany, clearly caught off guard and unable to deny the evidence before her, covered her mouth with her hand. "I'm sorry," she began, her voice trembling. "I happened to walk into the cafe where your husband works. I didn't know he worked there initially, but then I started going there regularly. My husband provides for me, but he's been neglecting me since we got married. I was feeling lonely," Tiffany continued, tears starting to form in her eyes. Despite her emotional response and her attempts to justify her actions, the betrayal cut deep. An affair, particularly with a friend's husband, was a breach of trust that was hard to overlook. Her reasons, while they might explain her actions, didn't excuse them. The revelation was painful but necessary, as it confirmed the reality I had begun to suspect and reshaped the dynamics of our friendship and personal lives. Throughout the confrontation, I maintained my composure, unaffected by Tiffany's tears. "I'm sorry to everyone else here, but Tiffany, I need to let you know that I will be seeking alimony from you," I announced firmly. I had also taken a formal step earlier that day. "I sent a certified letter to your mailbox today. Your husband should have already seen it." Tiffany's face fell as she absorbed the weight of the situation. "Oh no," she murmured, a mix of worry and disbelief in her voice. "How could he do something so terrible?" she asked, still reeling from the shock. "It's far worse to have an affair with a friend's husband, especially when you're married. And are you making our affair public? How could you be so terrible? You acted like a good husband, but you were cheating on me. And no, it's not just about exposing Tiffany. How could you do that to her family?" I retorted. "It's ridiculous." I continued, my tone firm. "It seems people who have affairs think alike. You believe that as long as the other person doesn't find out, it's not a big deal. But what you did was wrong, and it all needs to be revealed as part of your punishment. That's why I'm going to divorce you and seek alimony and child support." Faced with clear evidence of the affair, Albert could not deny the truth. He agreed to the divorce, though he was initially hesitant about the financial implications. Once I hired a strong lawyer and made it clear I was prepared to take the case to court, if necessary, he finally consented to the financial arrangements. Following the divorce, Albert sold the house we had lived in and moved to a new apartment. I pursued and received alimony from both Albert and Tiffany, totaling $50,000 from each. Additionally, I secured child support from Albert. Once everything was settled, Diana and I began our new life together, though the ordeal was deeply traumatic for me. The experience, while painful, marked the start of a new chapter where we could seek peace and rebuild our lives. Over time, the emotional wounds from my divorce began to heal. However, about 8 months later, I faced a new challenge while I was enjoying a relaxed day at home with Diana. My peace was disrupted by an urgent call from my mother, who informed me that my ex-husband Albert and his mother had unexpectedly shown up at my parents' house and had forced their way inside without permission. My father was not home at the time, so my concerned mother quickly rang me up. I hurriedly prepared myself and went over to my parents' house. Upon arriving, I found Albert and his mother sitting nonchalantly on the living room sofa as if they belonged there. Confused and a bit alarmed, I asked, "What are you both doing here at my parents' house all of a sudden?" Albert's response was shocking. He demanded, "I want you to give me back the money you owe me." "Huh? I never borrowed any money from you," I replied, perplexed. He retorted, "I paid $25,000 for our wedding, remember? You were in charge of the wedding, so that money was lent to you. Now that we're divorced, you're claiming it was all a fraud. Honestly, I could sue you for marriage fraud, but for now, all I want is that $25,000 back as a settlement." This unreasonable request took me aback. His mother also chimed in, insisting that I pay him as soon as possible. It became clear that Albert was struggling financially, which might have been driving his irrational demands. He had taken a full-time job at the cafe where he used to work part-time, but the pay was modest. Firmly, I reminded him, we both were equally involved in the wedding, and I paid more of our living expenses than you did. The $25,000 is just a small part of what I contributed. Don't bother me with such unreasonable demands. As the tension escalated, they refused to leave. Just then, my father arrived, having been alerted by my mother. "What are you guys doing here?" he demanded sternly. Albert repeated his claims to my father, who, although usually calm, was visibly furious and shocked by Albert's audacious demands. "It's your fault for having an affair in the first place. If you're going to make such outrageous demands, get out of here," my father asserted, trying to expel them from the house. In a desperate turn, Albert fell to his knees and begged, Please, Judy, lend me money. Not only are you demanding alimony, but Tiffany's husband is also after me, and I can't afford it. Even $16,000 would help." It was disheartening to see him in such a state, begging for money. However, I responded firmly, "No, I can't do that. Go home." The situation highlighted the deep desperation Albert was experiencing, but it also reaffirmed my resolve to maintain boundaries and protect my family's peace. As the situation with my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law escalated, my father intervened, suggesting he'd handle it. "Fine, I'll get the money. Just wait here," he said calmly, and walked to another room. Curious, I followed him. With a mischievous grin, he said, "Well, I have plenty of money. Since we have it, why not give it to them?" He opened the closet and pulled out some cash, creating a sense of suspense. "I wonder how this will play out," I mused silently. My father then put the bills into an envelope and handed it to Albert. With faces lit up with satisfaction, my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law left with the envelope, thinking their plan had worked. As soon as they stepped out, I locked the door behind them and made a quick call to the police. It didn't take long for Albert and his mother to realize the money was fake. They rushed back, pounding on our door in anger. "Hey, what's going on? This is Monopoly money. I don't want this fake cash," Albert shouted, his voice thick with fury. I couldn't help but laugh as I responded through the door. "Since we have so much of it, I thought I'd share it with you." Albert's frustration peaked, and he began banging even harder, now kicking the door with his feet. Their actions only escalated the situation further. As Albert and his mother wreaked havoc on our door, the police arrived and caught them in the act. The scene drew the attention of the neighbors, many of whom witnessed their arrest. In the end, not only did Albert not get any money, but he was also fined for the disturbance and had to cover the damage to our front door. Ironically, one of the bystanders was a regular at the cafe where Albert worked, and word of his antics spread quickly. As a result, Albert lost his job and found himself struggling to find new work. He had to move back in with his parents, and his in-laws ended up covering his alimony and child support payments. To safeguard my family further, I filed a restraining order against my former in-laws, ensuring that any future incidents would lead to an immediate police response. Now, life is more peaceful and fulfilling. I'm devoted to working hard and relishing the time watching my daughter Diana grow up.